Time is this thing that we talk about quite frequently, and it's one of those things that we often don't have enough of, or don't feel that we have enough of. Since I have been juggling lots of different things, so when I had a job and I'd got a baby and I got my husband and what have you, from then on I always felt like there just wasn't enough time. You've got so many things to juggle and so many different hats to wear that all of a sudden I kind of felt that time was running away from me and I didn't have time to do the things that I like. And then becoming a business owner 3 years ago, that added a new level of that on as well. So for me, this is all about some things that I have learned and that helped me. And when I used to belong to a mastermind a little while ago, everybody was like, you're so productive, you get so much done. So I did this for them as well and thought I would bring it back for people to learn from today. So we're going to have a little chat today about language, behaviors, my thoughts around 24 hours and sort of some of the psychology behind it, but I will keep the psychology stuff to a minimum. I know it's only me that loves that. We're going to talk about buying time, prioritizing, and some sort of time management strategies, distractions, and one of the bigger chunks of this will be about busyness. Busyness is this thing that we utilize, and we'll be exploring that a little bit more. If you're watching live, please feel free to to put comments in the chat, and I will pick up questions as I go. And if you're watching on replay, you can direct message me on LinkedIn. If we're connected on LinkedIn, and when I send the replay out, I will make sure that you have the link to LinkedIn so that you can come and ask me questions on there, or alternatively you can just respond to the email and ask me questions in there as well. But the replay will be sent within the next 24-ish hours, so that you've got that to look back and refer to if you want to watch it again. And if you want to watch it for the first time, then I would highly advise that you have something around so that you can take some notes, because there'll be some things that you might want to utilize from this today. So let's get started. So my first question for you that I would like you to pop down in your notes and have a think about this after the session, because we all have plans of what we would do if we had more time. So I would like you to, or I would invite you to journal around, if I had more time, I would. So that might be spend it with my friends, that might be travel, that might be write my book, that might be arrange an experience that I haven't had, that might be relax. You know, there are any number of things that if you had more time you might do. And if you had more time and you would do these things, it's likely they are things that fill your cup, and that's really important. So if you do a piece of journaling on that and you discover that if you had more time, you would do things that would fill your cup, it probably indicates that at the moment you might not be utilizing your time enough to fill your cup. So what does that mean? So I expect most of you have heard of the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So the idea is that unless you are full, unless you are re-energized, recovered, rested, all of those sorts of things, unless you have actually taken some time to fill your cup with the things that you love, the things that feed your soul, then actually, if you are trying to wear all of these hats, it's going to be really difficult for you. It's going to be really challenging for you to be able to help other people if you haven't helped yourself first. It's like that old analogy that when you're on an aeroplane and they do the safety talk, I see loads of those safety talks, like funny versions of them on aircraft. I have never, ever been on an aircraft where they've made it amusing, which is really dull. But they always tell you that the masks will fall out of the bit above your head, and to put your mask on before you try and help anybody else. And it's a little bit like that. If you are spending all of your time running around after your boss, your children, your business, your family, your friends, etc., then you've got to have time to fill your cup as well. And I talk to all of my clients about making sure that they've got a balance. So if you're doing something that you don't want to do, or you're seeing somebody that you don't really want to see, but there's some sort of mandatory obligation there, then you're going to want to balance the drained energy that's come from your cup by filling it again. And filling it might mean going for a lovely walk with the dog. It might mean going to a spa. It might mean getting a good night's sleep. You know, there are so many things that you can do to fill your cup. Like, your list of what fills your cup is something that I would invite you to create, so that when you're going, oh, I've got to go and see my mum and I don't really want to because she's very dramatic and very damaging and what have you. But if I do that, I can then stop on the way home at a beauty site that I really love, and I can go for a quick walk and just take in that nature. So you need to balance those things out a little bit. So there are bound to be things that if you had more time, you would do. So let's see if we can find you some more time. So the next part is talking about the language around time. And until you tune into the language that you're using, then you are going to struggle to work out what it is that you're doing to yourself in terms of time. So are you saying things like that? Oh, can't stop, I'm in a rush. Oh, I've got to get to that meeting. Oh, I'm so busy at the moment. Oh, like one of my friends this morning sort of sent a text, and then she was, I'm running around like a headless chicken. Are you using language like that? Do you feel like you're running around like a headless chicken? Do you use like the analogies around, you know, blue a fly and what have you, with how busy you are and how much you've got to juggle? Because the more you are saying that to other people and the more you're thinking it in your brain, the more you are evidencing that you are lacking in time, the more you are evidencing that you just don't have time to do the things that you want to do. And that's not actually living. Not having time for the things that make you feel good, that's just an unsustainable way to go. And if one thing I have found to be true when it comes to time is, if you don't take note of the time, if you don't take note of what you're spending your time doing, and you don't take note of what makes you happy and making sure that you're putting that in your life, that's not a life well lived. That's unsustainable. That is something where at some point your body's just going to go, no, you can now have a migraine. You can now have flu. You can now have a really bad cold that's going to keep you snuggled on the sofa under a blanket with a load of tissues watching Netflix for 3 days. Your body will eventually make you stop. And since I have integrated some of this into my life and made sure that I'm doing things that fill my cup, touch wood, my illness has significantly gone down. I used to struggle, like, I'm really going to use that word meaningfully. I used to really struggle with two things. One thing is I'm quite prone to pneumonia and pleurisy. I don't really know where that came from, but it just suddenly started happening. And I used to have kidney infections numerous times a year. And, you know, I'd have to literally stop. So I could pretty much guarantee that 2 weeks of a year I would have to take off to tend to those things. But now that I'm keeping an eye on my own well-being and my health, and taking a break when I need to, and resting and getting an early night and really paying attention to my body and to my soul, actually what's ended up happening is I'm not having those things anymore. So make time for your well-being. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. So, and what are your behaviors around time? Are you always rushing? Are you always thinking about the next thing, moving on to the next thing? So a few years ago, good few years ago now, we surprised the kids and took them to see Wicked in London. So we'd gone up to London. We did it every summer holidays. They had no suspicion whatsoever. We told them we were going to see Wicked. It's one of my favourite shows, and I think it was probably at that point the 4th time that I'd seen it, and I love it, absolutely love it. It was life-changing for me in a way that I can't possibly explain now, but maybe that's for another day. And it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. And we were in Act 2, And it was all very exciting. And it was probably about, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes before the end. And I realized that I had missed some of it. And I'd missed some of it because I was thinking about, right, when we get out of here, which exit do we need to try and head to get to the right road in order for us to be able to get to the restaurant that we were having dinner at quickly? How long could we be at the restaurant before we would then need to go to the train? How long would we need to take to get to the train station and get to the platform? And I'd missed like 5 minutes of the show. And I loved that show. I'd spent a lot of money on that show. And I was really cross with myself that I had just been thinking about what was next, because the reality is that all of that hinged on what exit we went out. How much control do you actually think in a packed theatre that I had over what exit we were going to go out of? None, absolutely none. You have to go where the crowd goes. So at the end of the day, it was a completely pointless exercise. None of it kind of went to plan. We were fine. We got the train back and we'd had a lovely meal and everything. But what a waste of my time. And that was probably one of the pivotal moments for me when it came to time, where I was just like, I need to just be in the moment. I need to be in the moment, because actually in being in the moment, I am buying time. That becomes my time. And never being in the moment is quite a dangerous thing, because when it comes to worry and when it comes to anxiety, both of those are in the past or the future. There's very little that we worry about that's right in the moment. If you're worrying about something, it could be something you said to somebody, or what's going to happen when you go to this meeting at work. They're very rarely in the right here and now. So if you can keep bringing your mind back to the present moment, actually what it does is it just rests the cortisol that's coursing around your body. It just calms you and leaves you able to make choices and make decisions. So I'm just going to segue a little bit into busyness for a second, because busyness is really quite key. In the same way that the British apologise and queue, we also like to say that we're busy. I don't actually know that that's just restricted to British people, but whenever we go to networking meetings, for example, yeah, how are things for you? Oh, yeah, I'm really busy. I used to hide behind that because I thought, God, if I'm not busy, people think I'm not really very good at my business or what have you. Anyway, in June, July and August this year, I was going through like a massive rebirth, I guess, really, of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to talk about and what I was passionate about. And what ended up happening is I didn't really have any clients during that time. It wasn't wholly planned. And by August, I was kind of freaking out. Anyway, was doing networking still, certainly through June and July. And I suddenly thought to myself, no, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say I'm not busy. I'm going to say I'm not busy. And so spoke to the first person and they were like, how are things with you? I'd already asked them. They'd said how busy they were. And I was like, I'm not very busy at the moment. My diary isn't packed at the moment and I'm utilizing that time to do X, Y, and Z. And she just like visibly relaxed and went, oh my God, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm not busy either. And I'm freaking out about it. And then we had like a really good conversation that was honest about what was going on with us. But what we drew from that conversation is it's okay to not be busy. And that busyness actually has this whole load of connotations underneath. And it would be really interesting if you feel you are a really busy person. Is there a feeling that comes up when you say you are busy? So sometimes people think busyness means I'm quite important, I'm quite wanted, and I'm having, lots of things going on, and that's really important. So I am busy. And that makes me feel good. That makes me feel like I'm achieving things. Sometimes, like that networking incident, people say I'm busy because everybody says they're busy. Everybody says, yeah, I'm busy. In the same way that when we say to people, how are you? People will go, I'm fine. Even if actually they are in the pits of depression, they will still say, I'm fine. Even if they're really stressed, we will still say we're fine, and we're really not. So is it just one of those things that everybody says, so you kind of catch on to it a little bit, really? And also, if you're busy, does it mean that you are being efficient? In my experience, for me, if I'm really busy, it rarely means I'm efficient, because busyness for me is caught up in a scarcity of time. There isn't enough time to get everything done. It's a bit of a panic. It's a bit of a problem. And so therefore, busyness for me doesn't have the greatest of connotations. So I would certainly make a note of that and have an explore around, do you say that you're busy a lot of the time? And what does busyness actually mean to you? Why do you say that? Why are you busy? Are you running around like the headless chicken? Or are you, actually just achieving every day solidly and consistently? And if you are, that's flipping brilliant. If that's what your busy is, then be busy. But I think for most of us, busyness doesn't have a great connotation to it. It's not about being productive. It's not about being efficient or anything like that. Okay, a little bit of the psychology around it. So 24 hours. Do we all have the same 24 hours? Lots of people believe that we absolutely do. We all have the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and everybody has the same, I guess, balance, currency, whatever you want to liken it to. But I don't believe that's true. And there are two key elements of thought process around time. One is created by Newton. And basically, to use a Love Island line, time is what it is. It's 24 hours a day, it's 7 days a week. We all have the same, and we've got to pack as much in as possible, and we don't really have enough time, and all of this kind of thing. But actually, let's just give a little analogy first before I go on to the other one, which I'm much closer to. So sometimes I'm in Newtonian time and feeling like I don't have much time. If we all had the same amount of time and it all went at the same pace, then this next analogy wouldn't work. So if you have got loved ones of any description, so that could be a pet, that could be children, that could be a partner, that could be friends. If that person comes to you and asks for your time when you're in the middle of something, and you are in the middle of something and you say, I don't have time right now. But then if they came in with an emergency, you wouldn't say, I don't have time. You would make time. So if it was your child, for example, and your child came in and went, I'm bored, can you spend some time with me? If you're busy, the likelihood is you're going to go, at the moment, I can't, darling. I'm really sorry, but we will do this later together. I used to like set timers, and so my children would know that when the timer went off, I was then theirs, and they used to get very excited about that. But if your child came in bleeding and had cut themselves falling off their bike outside or something, you're not going to have that time for them. So essentially, you can make time. And that's what Einstein created. Einstein created the thought process is it depends on what you're doing. I don't believe we all have the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't believe I have the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from day to day. It depends what I'm doing. And that's exactly what Einstein's thought process created. And both of them have been proven in some ways and discredited in some ways. But my thought process is, having for such a long time felt that my cards were dealt to me and I had to just deal with whatever was in front of me, the idea of being able to take control back and say, no, it's my decision what my life looks like. No, it's my decision what happens. No, it's my decision what I make time for. That's much more empowering for me. I prefer the idea of being able to take time, make time, create time, because we can. For the things that are important to us, we can make time for those. So I'm quite busy on a day-to-day basis. My diary is quite busy. Sometimes that's a really productive thing. Sometimes that's oh my God, I really need to sit down and have a look at this because this just isn't working. And my friends know that if there is a massive emergency, I would just rearrange and drop everything to be there for them. I have a very clear set of friendships where it's important to me. It's really important to me. And I know it's a two-way street. I know that I could phone them and go, guys, I know you're busy, but this has happened. I need you. And they'd be there. They'd be absolutely there right now. I know exactly who they would be. And that's really important to know in the friendships that are around you. There is a big difference to how your time is spent between busy, must keep going, scarce, lack, can't do this, too busy, haven't got enough time, to breathe, slow down, focus. I'm in control. I control what I spend my time on. Not 100% of the time, but I'm in control of how I spend my time. And even if I managed 80% in a day, that's a damn sight better than I don't have time for anything. I can't do that. That's not possible. You know, that's already putting a ton of barriers in place where we don't necessarily need them. So let's talk about buying time. So I think one of the key things, first of all, is to start a new habit. You'll probably need to put some reminders in your phone or something that you would see that would remind you, to just have a think about how you're spending your time. Like, how many hours are you at work? How many hours are you traveling to and from work? How much time are you spending doing chores in the house? You know, have a real audit, I guess, of how you're spending your time right now. And there are two ways that you can immediately get quick wins. And one of those ways is saying no to something. And the other one of those ways is empowering others. So if you have got older children, a partner in your house, and you are the one running around doing everything, how can you empower them? How can you say, actually, guys, I've got a job. I'm also trying to do this, that, and the other. What can I give you that would help me, that you would do and take off my hands? And you're probably going to get some rolling eyes, particularly if you've got teenagers and what have you. But actually, if it's children that we're talking about, one of our jobs as a parent is to help them to learn to live independently. So some of the things that you might get them to do are life skills. And we all have to do stuff that we don't want to do. And, you know, if you need to pass some of those on, then that's probably going to benefit them in the long term, as well as benefiting you by buying some time back. Putting boundaries in place where, and yes, sometimes this is about saying no. So sometimes the two are hand in hand, but it could be something like your mum phones you at the most inappropriate time almost every evening and wants to rabbit on. And so maybe what you could do is say to your mum, right, mum, I'm just sorting the dinner out at the moment, but I can give you a call at 8:30. I've got a little bit of time then, so maybe we can just have 20 minutes. And then that way you are diverting and also putting some sort of time in place that says, I'm free to have a proper conversation with you then for about 20 minutes. Or I'm going to be putting the dinner in 10 minutes, mum, but I can just have a quick chat with you now. So it's about putting those boundaries in place. And one of those boundaries is also about looking at what time am I spending with other people and do I actually enjoy it? So if you are spending time with a friend who drains your energy, don't. And I don't mean have like a massive conversation that says, I'm not doing that with you anymore. What I mean is, sometimes you can just do a bit of a fade out move where actually you're taking a step back and you're not as present in their life and what have you. It doesn't have to lead to like massive drama or a big deal. It can just be you just gently step back from the situation. The other thing is about being solution focused. So if you find yourself in a thought processes, which is, I can't do this, I can't do that, etc., that's spending your time, but it's not actually achieving anything. Whereas if you're like, right, this whole breathe, slow, focus, right, I've got this situation. What am I going to do about it? What can I do about it? Who can I influence about it? And then all of a sudden you end up with this action plan of tangible things that you can actually do that are going to move you forward, rather than wasting your time on all of the things that you can't do. Because what's the point in thinking about those? There's nothing you can do with them. It's not a good use of your time. So if you're thinking about a situation and how you're going to manage it with a can-do attitude, you're going to save yourself time. So it's buying your time back. And yeah, once you've had a look at what this time audit says, what do you want to spend your time doing? What do you want to spend your time on? And yes, sometimes we do have to do things that we don't want to do and see people that we don't want to see. But equally, there will certainly be things that you can make a decision about. You can make a different choice about and choose whether you want to spend your time there or whether you don't. Also, self-compassion around recognizing your own energy to achieve. So some days I am super uber productive, and yes, it feels great. Other days I'm not super uber productive, but instead of being cross at myself for it, what I do instead is I choose to be self-compassionate. I choose compassion to myself for it, because on the days where my energy is a bit lower and I'm not going to achieve the same amount of stuff, there is no point in me being hard on myself about it. There is no point in me getting cross at myself that I haven't got the time to do X, Y, and Z, or I haven't got the motivation, or I haven't got the energy. I know it's going to come back at some point. So being harsh on myself on the days where I'm not going to be able to achieve as much is completely counterproductive and really bad for my mental well-being. So take into consideration when you're looking at your day, okay, so if I could do one thing today that would make me feel like I'd moved forward or I'd achieved something, what would that be? And then if that one thing is achieved, that's flipping marvelous. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Sarah, my boss might not agree with that. And that's absolutely fine. And sometimes we do kind of plow through things, but try and sort your work into the stuff that really needs the best of your brain. So all the creative stuff, or all of the thing that's going to take like a lot of thought process because you need a set of resolutions for it. Utilize a good day for those. And on the not so good days, try and catch up on some other things that maybe don't need as much brain power, but are still good to get done. So just be aware of kind of where that's at and where your head's at. But getting cross at yourself for not achieving lots in a day is completely counterproductive. Okay, so one time management strategy that works really, really well for me is something called the Pomodoro technique, which I know sounds really posh, but Pomodoro basically means tomato. The reason it's the tomato technique is because the person who invented it, or maybe this person didn't invent it, but the person who is known for inventing it, utilized the timer that he had in his kitchen in Italy, which is where the Pomodoro comes from. And the timer that he used was shaped like a tomato. So it just became the Pomodoro technique, which sounds much better than the tomato technique, let's face it. And the way it works is you set up your work, and then you work for 25 minutes and you take a 5-minute break. So that's your first half hour. 25 minutes, 5-minute break, that's your first hour. And you do that twice, and then you take a slightly longer break after the second hour. And really what that's doing is working with our natural abilities. Like, actually, we're not particularly well equipped as humans to keep going and going and going. We need that downtime, we need that break. And also, with the amount of work that's done on screens, taking a 5-minute break every half an hour is a really, really good idea. Obviously, if your head's really in something and you are able to do that, then that's great. And whatever it is that you've got, please could you hand a bit to me? But the Pomodoro technique works really well for me because it really focuses me. Like, I've got 25 minutes, and in this 25 minutes, I want to achieve this. So I'm going to achieve it. I want to do that. And it's a great way. So if you gave me a job and said, Sarah, you've got an hour to do it, I'd do it in an hour. If you said to me, Sarah, here's a job and you've got 25 minutes to do it, my solution focused part of my human brain that wants to find the quickest path of least resistance will creatively find the path of least resistance and do it in 25 minutes. So if I time myself doing a job and what have you, I'm more likely to do it quicker So if I'm not using Pomodoro technique, I quite often time myself cleaning because I'm super competitive anyway. And I will clean much quicker and get the job done much quicker if I time myself. So Pomodoro technique is a really, really, really good way of channeling and helping your time. Okay, so let's talk about prioritizing, because that's always a really tricky one as well. And sometimes you can be tempted to make this massive long to-do list of things and start at the top and work your way down. And yes, it is lovely to see how you get stuff ticked off your list, but potentially what you're doing is you're not prioritizing and you're just doing stuff to get it off the list rather than doing the big things that are going to really feel like you've moved forward. So one of the best sort of stories that goes along with this is rocks in a jar. So if you imagine you've got one of those big sort of kilner jars, okay, so it's quite a decent size, got a lid on the top, and you need to fill, your time is filled within that jar. So what you do is you take your big rocks first and you put your big rocks in. So big rocks in the bottom, and you get as many of those piled up into it as humanly possible. After that, you can start to put in your pebbles, which are a bit smaller. And these are like the not quite so massive, big things that you need to do in a week. These are more of the need to tick a few bits off, but they're not your 5-minute jobs either. And then once you have put your rocks and in your pebbles in, then you can put your smaller little bits of shingle in. And they are the slightly smaller jobs that you need to do. Then you put your sand in, because it's all going to then fill in the areas and get lots done and what have you. So you're filling your time. And then the last bit is the water, which are all the little tiny little bits that you need to do that don't take very long at all, but they are there to sort of fill in the time. Now, if you do it that way, you'll get all the important stuff done first, followed by the slightly smaller jobs, and work your way down until you're kind of, you've ticked off your 5-minute tasks and what have you. So if you did it the other way around, if you filled the jar with water first, maybe that wouldn't fill the jar, but maybe you then put some sand in, and then maybe you put some pebbles in. By this point, probably your jar is going to be full and you haven't done a single one of the big rocks. So always prioritize your big rocks first and put those in the jar before you then fill it with anything else, to be as the most efficient that you can be with your time. So each week it's worth having a look and thinking, right, my big rocks this week are this and this, and trying to divide your tasks up so that you know kind of where they fit in your jar and therefore where they fit in your priority. We talked a little bit earlier about what you spend time on. I decided that I was going to do something a little while ago just to test how much time I was spending on social media without really realizing it. So I decided, and I don't know if you know that you can do this, and I don't know if it's on all phones, but it's certainly on Apple. You can limit how long you are on your phone for on a specific platform or a specific app. So I decided that Facebook, which is not so much where I'm present now, I only want to look at Facebook for a maximum of an hour a day. And I thought an hour a day is quite a bit really to be looking at Facebook. And although predominantly now I don't get the reminder saying you've come to the end of your time limit, I certainly did a lot. And I was thinking, God, an hour. And I wasn't doing anything on my phone. I was just scrolling and reading and commenting and switching off, really. And switching off is really nice, but scrolling your phone is definitely not just switching off, it is also blocking out. Now I'm pretty good with it, but I didn't realize how much I used it. So the other day I wake up late, and we don't often get nothing to get up for. So I was lying in bed, and my husband always wakes up earlier than me, and he got bored and he'd gone downstairs. And I was lazing around in bed for a while, and I'd only been awake just under an hour, and my Facebook just went, you have 5 minutes left for today. And I was like, oh my God, I've literally just been really lazy and laid here looking at my phone. And part of that's quite nice, but my point is that you can do that without realizing. You can do that without knowing. And certainly some of the evenings that we spend are the telly's on, we're not really watching it, we're both on our phones, and then suddenly it's time for bed. And you think, not that we have to be achieving something every moment of our day, but there were other things I could have done. I could have read a bit of my book. I could have had some quality time with my husband. I could have actually taken in the last episode of that box set, which I've now got no idea what happened. I've got no clue whatsoever. So we'll probably have to watch it again. I haven't done anything that makes me fill my soul that evening. I haven't done anything that makes me feel good. I've just doom scrolled and what have you. And it's not just being on social media, although that is a really big thing nowadays, but we can just fritter away time quite easily and then be like, oh my God, I don't have time to do anything. And that's where that scarcity comes in. So this is a little bit more challenging, but one of the things that was a real eye-opener for me is I'm choosing not to. So this kind of goes back to the language. And if it came to it that there were certain things that I wanted to do and I wasn't getting them done, at some point I would have to admit that I was choosing not to. So if you say to yourself, I'm choosing not to have a lunch break today, that's very different from I haven't got time for a lunch break today. Because actually, for the most part, unless some massive emergency comes up, we can all make time for a lunch break each day. And it's actually really important to you. Do you know that actually, if you don't take a lunch break, you are likely to be significantly less productive in the afternoon, meaning not taking a lunch break is a complete and utter waste of your time. You won't get anything more done. In fact, statistics prove that you will get less done by not having a lunch break. So take the lunch break. Even if it's 20 minutes, half an hour, you will be so much more productive if you take that break away. And if you don't take a lunch break, it wasn't that you didn't have time, it's that you chose not to. And the more you use that language around, I chose not to do X, Y, and Z, the more you think, how could I choose to? How could I make sure that that happens? And it's uncomfortable. If you are used to being busy, as I certainly was, and busy in the non-productive way, making change of any kind is incredibly uncomfortable, incredibly difficult. But we can make time. We just sometimes choose not to. And that could lead you to a couple of things. That could lead you to, well, I want to make time to do that. That's important to me. Or it might lead you to thinking, why am I not making time for that? Why am I not doing that? And you may well find that there's something underlying in it. So just to share, we had a problem in our house, which turned out to be two problems, two water leaks. And we knew that they were probably happening. We had some indicators that we might have a leak under the floor and what have you. But I knew that if we contacted the insurance company, that we would have to pay out quite a lot of money because of the excess and the fact that although they will sort to a certain point, they won't fix the problem. And I didn't know how big the problem was, and that felt scary. So the reason I didn't contact the insurance company for a really long time is that felt scary. It felt really scary. And one of the jobs that I've got to do today, which I'm really not looking forward to, is I've got to phone the pet insurance to let them know that our dog passed away about a month ago. I really don't want to do it, but I really do need to, because every time I think about it, I'm getting more anxious about it. And actually what I need to do is just bite the bullet and get it done. And then that goes off my list of things to do, and actually it will release some of the anxiety around it as well. I don't even know what I'm anxious about. I think maybe saying it out loud to them. So sometimes when we're not doing something and we realize that we're choosing not to do something, maybe there's some sort of fear or procrastination around there that is linked to having a difficulty around it or a resistance to it. So it's good to explore that and have a look. The other couple of things that I found really useful in not taking up my time quite so much is I have discovered I'm quite easily distracted. So if I have the little bar that comes up on the bottom of my screen to tell me I've got an email that's come in, that distracts me. And then I think, oh, maybe I should look at the email. And actually I'm in the middle of a task, so I need to not. So I can highly recommend turning off notifications on your phone and turning off notifications on your computer, so that you don't get these things up that go, oh, pay attention to me now, when actually what you need to be doing is continuing whatever job it is that you're doing. So with your phone, again, certainly on Apple, you can turn off notifications en masse, or you can turn off notifications just on specific apps. And I find that really useful to do. And then I'm checking it when I want to. The other thing I find quite useful is, you know, when you go to an app and it's got a little red badge on it that tells you how many notifications are in there, I've turned that off for almost everything as well, because actually I don't need to see that I've got 10,874 emails in my personal Gmail that I haven't opened, because most of them are tut. But as soon as I see that, I'm like, is that lack again, like, oh, I haven't got time to go through all of these, and then that kind of causes a problem. So I hope that that has been useful. We've looked at quite a number of things. There is a lot more that can be said on it, but I just tried to take the best bits that I had learned. So just as a little recap, we've gone through a journaling point. If I had more time, I would, to really have a look at where you're not committing your time at the moment, and is there a change that you might want to make around that. We talked about creating time, particularly around, like, if somebody needs our assistance or needs our help, we would drop everything. And talked about the language that you're using around, I'm in a rush, I'm too busy, I'm going to be late, and what have you. Then we talked about the behaviours, so about rushing and never being in the moment. And we talked about busyness. So busyness, what does it mean to you? Is it a positive thing? Is it achieving? Is it not? We talked about the two types of time, which are the Einstein time, which is it depends what you're doing, because sometimes time flies by and sometimes time is so slow. But also Einstein time gives you the ability to have more control over your time, whereas Newton time is all about having something to fill and not having enough of it and feeling like the scarcity around it. We talked about different ways of buying time, which include boundaries and saying no. Also utilizing your time in a solution focused way about what you can control and what you can influence, rather than focusing on what you can't. How you choose to spend your time, if you look at it as a currency, recognizing your own energy to achieve. And then we talked about a time management thing called Pomodoro technique, which is really useful. We talked about prioritizing, about your different, like your rocks in the jar, and what you spend your time on and what you want to spend your time on. A couple of ideas for getting rid of some distractions, and hopefully in that you have found some things that you have found super useful. So I'm going to turn off the recording now, so thank you very much for joining me, and then I'm just going to chat to the people who are live.